Okay, now I'm going to have a segment myself, and um, this is the Mucklerath Mining and Coal Tipple. This funny name is from I grew up in Forest Hills, Pennsylvania, a little borough outside of Pittsburgh, and its original name in the 1700s was Mucklerath. And one of my kindergarten friends, who I'm still in contact with, said, "Hey, you ought to name it after the first name in Forest Hills, Pennsylvania." Well, that's where it came from. A little bit of history that nobody cares about. So this is the coal tipple that I've been working on since early June. And I made it specifically as a contest entry for the National Narrow Gauge Convention. It was just held this past week. And it was very consuming. It took a lot of time, a lot of materials, and I think that was recognized because I took first place in dioramas, and that was my goal, and it was achieved. And I'm very pleased that the attendees recognized the structure. I'm honored. Um, I have over 500 hours in this model. It's the largest model I've ever built and has the most time I've ever dedicated to a model. It has 400 of those nut bolt castings. A lot of people abbreviate those as NPCs. It has 100 custom made 3D printed brackets, which are similar detail parts. It has over 2,000 pieces of scale lumber. It has extensive LED lighting through it and two custom sound units. It features ON30 and ON18 tracks in it. And I'm going to walk you through the entire build process. I started with a rather robust base. This is 3/8 plywood all the way around. The method to my madness was I knew I was going to be driving this to St. Louis from Bloomington in the back of my pickup truck. And I was going to use this base as basically the bottom of my crate. And I didn't want this thing to flex. I knew it was going to be a big model, and I wanted a real substantial base for it. So then I skinned the top of that you just saw there with a 1/8 inch aircraft grade plywood, and the back there is a pit. Of course, like anything I do, it's all madness. There's no real plan other than we build it as we go. So I sketched in a couple of the tracks there, and I just started with the build. First thing I did is I laid in the cork road bed. I took Pico ON30 track, glued that in place, and then I started with the foundation, which are these these are nothing more than 1/4 inch sticks put together for 1/2 inch width with tapered ends, and those are the concrete foundations. The intention was to integrate this into the main part of the layout. It was constructed to be the same height as 2-inch foam. So on my layout, if you drop it into the back part of the layout, which basically none of you have seen except for the visitors, this was supposed to be flush with the fascia, which it is, and flush with the 2-inch foam to the right there. But a little help from some friends who visited this past weekend, we made a extension to the layout. Phil Edholm and Jeffrey Jordan, they helped me this past weekend. And I want to point out that Phil does not work slow. He does not work at a medium pace. He works at an extremely fast pace. You can't tell, but on the back of him, he has an on-off switch that just basically runs on high speed. My layout room is above the garage, and there's about 14 steps that lead from the layout room to the laundry room to the basement or to the garage where my table saw, drill press, and chop saw are. Phil must have made, I don't know, I'm not exaggerating, 40 trips up and down those steps. He literally ran up and down those steps. Amazing guy. And we got it all done. This was the where I'm going to put these modules. The layout's to the right. This is a 2 foot by 4 foot extension. These are basically modules, 2 feet by 4 foot wide. I'm going to put the Len Eberwein stamp mill on one of them, and I'm going to put my coal tipple on the other. And the idea is that at any time you can interchange one for the other, and it gives you a storage unit. And of course, there's a little bit more work to do, but in essence, the bulk of it work is done. So I'm going to show you the build process of the tipple. First thing was I had to make a template. So I took some scrap styrene and made this template. I had to make 15 of these I don't know what you call them, 15 of these supports. One thing when you make a tipple, you see there's a little takeaway here. If where the joints are, where the wood comes together, see right here and here, what you want to do is make a cutout so the glue doesn't stick to the styrene. It's just a neat little trick that I learned. You still have the integrity laying the wood in there, but it won't stick to your styrene. Of course, it depends what kind of glue you use, but I use super glue. So one of the most time-consuming things about this model, besides its sheer size and number of parts, was every single stick was scribed with a razor saw. And there are hundreds and hundreds of these nut bolt washers, and they all have to be drilled, a drop of glue, and a piece placed in there. So there's a finished one, more or less. See the little bolt? So there's bolts everywhere here, and there's 15 of these. Now, for the bottom here, it looked pretty naked to me, that it's sitting on the concrete. So you have two choices. Either these would pass through the concrete, or they would come up with some sort of bracket. So it scared me that I'd have to make so many of these with styrene and then glue a Grant line piece on there. So I needed a lot of these. And so I have a friend, Andy Root, who has a resin printer. So I gave him this very precise drawing in it, and I sent it to sent it to him, and he did a CAD drawing for me, and he printed these out in resin for me. He lives 2 hours away, and we meet for lunch. We each go an hour, and he gives me a bag full of them. And then I put them on tape, blue tape, masking tape, stick them on there, and I give them a base coat of a rust color, and then I place them, on. So there's 15 of these. That's why you need the template, because they're all exactly the same, and each one of them have the NBRs on there, the nut bolt washer package, and I tried to make them scale length. So see this. That's where we had to do some more custom work, as you'll see a little later, for to attach those. After I did the base, the next step was to dream up the tipple. So using the 12 by 12 material and all scale lumber, I said I'm going to have dual tipples on here, two sides to the story. And so I started building up the tipple, and then each one of these is strip wood. This took a lot of patience and consumed wood like a fire. And once I did one, and I was so relieved I got one done, but then I had another one to do, the other side. But the end just justifies the means. So there's the one side more or less done. If you look real close, you'll see this little connecting piece. This is basically to represent a piece of steel with two bolts in it to link the two pieces of wood together, give it a realistic look, because this is approximately 20 inches long, and of course lumber doesn't really come that long, so I wanted to break this up into different pieces, and I wanted to connect them with this fastener. And Andy came through for me there. There's the one that's a little closer. You can see this is all weathered, the track, and ballasted because once this is up, you can't get to it, you know. So here it is developing further. Another look at it. I put this decking on here. My intention is to have an office coming off of here, some sort of building that I was envisioning. Again, there's no plans here. This is just, I just envisioned it story one, story two, level one, level two, level three, level four. I just kept building it as I went. You can see the graining in the wood. People say, well, it's heavy graining for O scale, but for model making, it really gives it a nice touch. Everything's stained with Hunterline driftwood stain. Next is the on-site office. I made this out of plywood. Um, I'll show you where these go together and how I cut it. This is 1/8 inch aircraft grade plywood because originally I was going to make my own clapboard siding. That didn't work out. So I don't have the luxury of a laser saw, so I took my Dremel with basically a saw wheel, and I cut without cutting my fingers off. I made these cuts, and then with a file, with a emery board, I squared them off. Totally old school. Every time I do this, I say I'm going to buy a laser. This is it assembled. I box everything with this 1/4 inch material. So this is plywood with 1/4 inch material. This is where it's going to rest. I did a test fit to make sure it looked where I wanted it to go. I envisioned a deck here, some kind of walkway. That was the idea. What's not shown is my failed attempt of making my own clapboard siding. I simply took a flat X-Acto blade and scraped it all off and used northeastern scale lumber clapboard siding and cut it to match this and stained it with Hunterline stain as a base coat. This was an evolving process. I used red acrylic paint to give it, first I put down the Hunterline stain, then I put down a red acrylic paint, diluted a little bit. What I eventually did was I stained it with Hunterline red, redwood red, and then I went back and used the red acrylic paint, and then with pan pastels I added shading and things. So it was an evolution. I finally came down with a process to take the raw clapboard siding, stain it with the Hunterline redwood stain. Then I would hit it with the acrylic red paint in dry brushes, and then I would put on the pan pastels. It gave me an acceptable look. After that little bit, I went back to the coal storage bins. Here you see I finished both sides. Now I had to put the ends on with my Imagineering. I did reference a West Virginia coal tipple that this loosely looks like. You see the model shaping up there, and this was its original intention where it was going to go on the layout, but we've, as I showed you, it's not going there. Now I created these false walls here. I took this cardstock and I cut it in here, and then I veneered it with this strip wood. And I wanted to put, there's looking down at the empty coal bin. I put in a false floor here, about an inch, about 4 to 6 feet below the top of the coal bin. Then I put foam in here that I carved with to simulate coal piles. Then I painted it with Mod Podge because I wanted it sealed. And then I painted it with, when that was dry, I painted it with Elmer's glue, and then I sprinkled coal cinders, coal on there from Woodland Scenics. And you can see it here. See those? You can see the coal. Um, there's the coal there to the right. So I didn't want to fill these with, $50 worth of Woodland Scenics coal, so I made a false bottom. Now I called again on my friend Andy Root to do these elevator carriages to get the coal from the base all the way up to the model in the back of the model. So I did this very precise drawing and texted it to him. And Andy came back with a CAD drawing, which was pretty close to what I wanted. And then I came back and said, put an extension on these for me. I needed a way for this thing to go up and down in a track. So I said, put an extension on me and lower this a little bit and put another bracket here. So this was the original drawing. This is what his first pass of it was. And here was the final. I'll show you those later. I look at this in terms of levels. So the next thing was, now that I had the coal in place, and sorry I jumped. I was kept getting closer and closer to the deadline of this narrow gauge show, and I was running out of time, and I didn't take as many photographs as I should. But in this photo here, you can see that the office building is on. I've put a roof on. This is asphalt paper that I've used in the past. It's glued to a piece of plywood, just like this. This is aircraft grade plywood. I put beams across here first, joists across here. Then I put the plywood down because you'll see the underside of this roof. This is the same technique. This is that northeastern scale lumber, the siding, and I stained it with the redwood hunter line stain, then the red acrylic paint, and then I went on with the pan pastels. I wanted to match the two. I wanted this roof is going to be this corrugated steel roofing. It comes silver. This is the real aluminum. I sprayed it with the Tamaya light gray non-filling primer. And then I sprayed it, keep sensitive mouse. Then I did the same technique I've used in the past. I have this is that rust system I have where you spray it with an orange enamel, then paint it with an acrylic. And then I used several Vallejo acrylics with a natural sponge, and I came up with all the sheet material I felt I needed for that particular roof. There's a lot of variation here, and I cut them 1 inch wide by 2 inches deep, so they're basically 4 foot by 8 foot pieces, and you can't really tell here, but there's each one of these, one's dark, one's more orange than the other. There's a variation in the paint in these. Then I put them into 5 different piles. And then when I put the roof on, I randomly put them up here. So you can see the variation in color here. These are the dark ones here. There's some orange ones here. So you don't want this thing to look perfectly uniform. And I super glued these on. You start with the front row. I bent them over the front of that plywood I had there. You can see the joists are exposed. It had a very nice look. And then when it was all done, I sprayed it with dull coat. Everything gets sprayed with dull coat. So now you can see these windows are in. These are Grant Line windows. And I didn't use acetate. I used that micro crystal. I had to tilt the model on its side and with the toothpick fill all these windows, which took a couple of tedious evenings of doing. So these are all microcrystal. Looks like Elmer's glue. I wanted a transparent, but I didn't want you to be able to look inside because I had no intention of detailing the inside. Everything else has this asphalt roofing, this tar paper roof. Electrical. I ordered these lights from Amazon. They're LED lights. They look like a bulb. They're all assembled. They come with a straight wire. I just bent this wire, and they have these very fine wires. Pat Rivard told me how to, you just apply heat to this with your soldering iron, and the plastic just goes away, and you're able to solder. Pat helped me with that about a month ago. I put in a terminal strips, positive and red and black. There's a lot of lights in here, so I needed terminal strips. And for the show, I needed battery powered, which I did. I had a little battery pack that went inside here. When it goes on the layout, it'll go to my, I'll put a direct 12-volt power supply here with resistors to knock that down so I don't burn my LEDs out. But it will be hardwired eventually. But for the show, I put a floor in here and a battery pack. And here's the finished tipple. I have to admit it's a pretty impressive model because of its sheer size. It's 24 inches wide by 23 inches high. It consumed an enormous amount of wood. I wouldn't want to even guess what the quantities were there, what it cost, but I think what really set the model off was all these little details that Andy printed for me. These nut bolt washers, these special brackets everywhere, real high detail items. I wanted a variety of roofs. I just didn't want tar paper roof. I wanted a corrugated roof here. I toyed with having a wooden roof up here, but I just thought it would be nice to match everything. You can see little subtle weathering underneath the windows. I used black pan pastels, gave this a light weathering on the front. On the back, this took a lot of time to do this thing. So I had to do, these are the three elevators. There's a pit here. So the idea is On18 bottom dumping hoppers that Andy designed for me specifically because they don't exist. Dump into this pit, dump their coal in there, and these elevators take the coal up, dump it into this building here, which is screens and shakers. And the idea is that there's these ore bins here, these holding, the tipple itself is compartmentalized. So the chutes that lead from the screens and shakers feed four different theoretically sizes of coal, or give you the opportunity to give you four different sizes of coal. This door is because there's going to be this is a combination tipple and mine. There's going to be a mine that runs out here. So there'll be timber trestle here. Two bents will fit onto this part of it. These are removable doors to get, removable wall panels to get to the battery pack and the electrical. They just pop right out. And this ladder will go away. There'll be stairs. I just ran out of time. So there'll be another walkway here and some sort of stairs to get up to this thing. This is looking down the bottom. You can see all the bents here, and each one has these nuts, bolts, and washers. All the wood's scribed, and there's a close-up. Finally, a close-up. These I had Andy make up for me. The devil's in the details. He made these up for me, and he made these. This is the end. Um, this originally was a wooden roof. It looked out of place, so I threw tar paper on there. Put this guy on there. He's looking down the tracks for the train. Just a worker here. I'll bet you guys can guess where I came up with this sign. I did another exercise with ChatGPT 5.0. I gave it the name of the mine. I gave it all that information. Told it I wanted a miner with a pickaxe and a light, a silhouette. About 10 tries later, I got this. But it was perfectly acceptable. I sanded, it was printed on paper. I sanded the back of it till it was almost transparent. Then with Elmer's glue, I stuck it on the side here. You can see those windows. That's a nice effect. That's how it would look in a coal mine, all covered with dust and stuff. That's why I didn't want acetate on there. I thought it was more realistic to use that crystal coat. There's a nice view. I have walkways that run down the center of this model so that if there's some issue, and there's a door at the end here that leads into that office, it's too dark to see it, but they can walk up, around, and down, have a look at all the different bins. Nice detail there of the end wall. These are the conveyor tracks. That's plastic, styrene with, and then two strips here. So the idea is that these carriages run up and down, and this is the hoist house up here. If anybody's ever seen um, the narrow gauge, oh, what is it, out in New Mexico? That's where this is pirated from, the idea. A lot of detail, all these nut bolt washers, if you have the patience, really set the model off. Yeah, oops, sorry. Let's see here. There's a detail on one of those cars. See how it runs up that track. I could probably do a little better job for the fastener here, but I was rushed. You know, some sort of bracket. But it's all pretty authentic mechanically. There's a close-up. It works scrutinized under high detail like this. You know, there's the board by board construction. It's like you could jump in there, and there's a screen so workers don't fall into the pit. I've got to put the lift devices to lift these up. So the idea is this carriage comes down, these get lifted up, the coal falls into this bucket. These buckets are hinged in the back. And see, this is the On18 track. It's the width 9 millimeters, same as N scale. There's one of the cars that Andy made for me. I didn't have time to finish them, so I brought one to the show and featured it, but they're just bottom dumping. There isn't such a thing in the market. I needed a bottom dumping ON18 hopper car. They didn't exist anywhere. So Andy was kind enough to make one for me. So there it is again. There's the finished model. There's just a few things left to do to it. I put this fella in here for scale, just to give you an idea of the enormity of this thing. And there's the award. And that's it. Thank you.
Hey, Tom, great model.
Thank you.
Hey, got a question for you. When you applied the Hunter line stains, did you see variation on the various pieces of wood
Yeah, I did.
before? I think that adds a lot, to tell you the truth. But did you see that variation before you started using like pan pastels to simulate coal dust and everything?
Well, the funny thing, you should mention that I blasted through a bottle of driftwood, and
Yeah.
And then I opened the second bottle, and damned if it wasn't a different color,
Hmm.
from a different batch. And I was like, oh boy, because I didn't want it to look black and white. It's okay to mix them up as you're building. In
Yeah.
other words, but to have like one side of the building this color and the other side another color. So I literally had to mix hunter line other colors. I had to mix gray and I had to mix dark brown. I had to mix it to get it pretty much the same color as the original driftwood. That didn't exactly make me a happy camper, to be honest. I agree with what you're saying. You want the variation, but you don't want it to be surprised by the color. In other words,
Yeah.
if you know up front you can mix the sticks, that's one thing. But if you're halfway through the model and then you open up another bottle and it's a completely different color, which it was, I was a little pissed, to be honest with you. you know. But I custom mixed one and I got it really close.
Good. Another question on the, I noticed that all of your track was weathered. What
Yeah.
did you use to weather the track?
The side rails, you mean,
Yeah.
or I always do the same thing. I take a polycorp rust color and I take a very fine brush and I run it
Okay.
on the side of the. Then I take some of my Vallejo rust colors. There's about five of them. And I
Hmm.
randomly paint the rail different colors on the way down. And then before any of that, I usually spray the whole thing with that flat brown. So I take away the plastic sheen of the ties.
Okay.
Then I go back and I hand paint the uh, tie plates a rust color. The rail and the rail spikes are painted a rust color, a reddish color. It's just what I do. But
Okay. Good. Thanks.
any other questions? I um, I was humbled that I won. I was pleased, I have to admit, but it was a it was quite an ordeal making that thing. But hopefully it'll be one of the standout models on my layout.